Progress.
I am showing straight up 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order and start with a roll call.
Okay. Shelley Reed,
Here,
Manny Becerra for Alex Valto,
Here.
Harris Armstrong absent, Rob Pierce for Francine Donchik,
Present.
Marilyn Kramer,
Here.
Kate Nelson,
Here.
Carl Nieberline,
Here.
Pat Phillips absent, Carrie Rohrmeyer absent, and that's it.
all right, perfect, thank you. Next we'll do our salute to the flag. Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and lead us in the pledge?
You got it. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
I
allegiance.
pledge
to the flag
allegiance to the flag
of the United
United
States of America
of America
and to the
and to
republic which it
for
stands,
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Great. I forgot how awkward those were during COVID. All right, let's move on to approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
Okay, can we get a second?
Commissioner Nelson will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Kramer and a second by Commissioner Nelson. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next we are move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have none for this item.
Okay, let's close public comment and move on to approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Becerra, I motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Becerra and a second by Commissioner Kramer. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let's move on to business of the day. Director Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Jeremy Smith for the record. I'm excited to take us through a presentation talking about our regional plan update upcoming for our October target date, and to really focus in on the proposed policy additions and minor edits that we are proposing for this update. Because of the way the tech is set up here today, I can't see the faces anymore, which is fine. But so if you want to jump in at any point, interrupt me, just speak up and I'll stop and answer your question, or hold to the end, whichever you prefer. So, all right, here we go. So just as a quick reminder, we updated the plan and with a wholesale comprehensive update to the regional plan in 2019. And so, we feel like that's been working really well. And through our analysis of the plan and what we've been doing, kind of all collectively determined that we only really need a minor update this time through. But specifically, we tasked ourselves back in 2019 with two areas that we knew needed a little bit of bolstering in the plan. And that was our natural resource section, and also how we dealt with public infrastructure in that section of the public. And so we created for ourselves policies that said, hey, Team RPA staff and RPC and RPGB, go out there and create a natural resources plan and any policies that go along with that, and also create a public infrastructure plan that can help inform our process and policies around public infrastructure. So that's what we've been working on for the time since 2019. Really ramping up here recently, obviously, because we're coming towards the end. So got a lot of products just about ready to share. Some stuff has been shared already, but today I'm happy to go through, like I say, all of those policy additions. So wrong button. That is what this slide is showing. This is the attachment one in your packets. and I just kind of want to go through it really quickly, and then we'll go into detail. But there's basically 3 colors on this table. Anything you see in blue is a new policy that does not currently exist at all in the regional plan, but is something that we feel from our work, especially around natural resources, is something that we want to include to improve our ability to assess impacts to natural resources and to help meet our state mandate. Anything that you see in green is a policy that already exists in the regional plan, but what we're trying to do there is minor edits to make sure that we have updated those policies for anything that didn't quite work since 2019 or maybe had been misrepresented or that was affected by any of the blue policies that are being added. And then finally, there's this 2 columns on the left, old policy num versus new policy num. And that's basically, in order to fit really the natural resource consideration areas policy into an appropriate zone in the plan right next to the development constraints areas, we wanted to shift the numbers around a bit. And so what we're seeing there is simply renumbering. So for example, if you go kind of halfway down from NR9 to is going to NR10, parks and open space connectivity, nothing about the policy is changing other than the number. So that's what this table really indicates. And then I'm sure if you looked through the attachment, you would have seen some red strike through text. And that is really just showing text that's currently existing in the plan that is planned or proposed to be removed. Okay. So with that, start by giving you a little update about our natural resources plan effort ongoing. We actually have a version of that plan. It's about 80 to 85%, maybe even 90% complete, but there's a couple of chapter pieces and additional appendices that we're working right now to get buttoned up. And we're pretty optimistic that that'll be next week, that'll be available version 2 on this website, www.tmrpa.org/2024-RPU. And when that becomes available, we will definitely send you an email so you can go out there and take a look at version 2. We'll be bringing it officially as well at the end of July, and I'll talk about that path to adoption schedule. So what I really want to focus though on with this natural resource work is the 4 policies that we've identified through this process over the past year and a half or so since we really started the update in earnest, that we're looking to add these new policies to the regional plan. The first one is about source water protection. For many years, we've been working with the Western Regional Water Commission and NDEP and TUMWA to identify and help map the location of critical source water protection areas. These are areas that are around municipal wells or areas that are around tributaries of the Truckee or the main stem of the Truckee itself, like a buffer. And it's just kind of trying to ensure that we are aware of those recharge areas for those water sources that we use here for drinking water and all of our water, and that we're actively assessing the impacts of a proposed case to regional planning in the context of source water protection. And so at the Washoe County cleanwater.org website, which is a site that we host and help kind of in the background to prop this up, there is the online 2020 Integrated Source Water and 319 Watershed Protection Plan. And that is where the critical source water protection concepts and maps are described. And there's also an online viewer, a map viewer that allows you to see those areas. What we're asking for in this policy is that local jurisdiction master plans and affected entity facilities plans recognize the existence of this plan and agree to use it as one of the sources for assessing impacts to our water supply when they're looking at their cases. And then we've put upon ourselves, after kind of a back and forth with the jurisdictions, that we are going to spatially identify, and I'll talk about that in the NRCA policy, but spatially identify if there are any interactions between a specific case subject site and these critical source water protection areas. And if there is an interaction, then we'll get getting busy and requesting comments from TUMWA or Northern Nevada Public Health, whatever the appropriate entity is, to tell us about what those impacts might be and give us comments to work with the jurisdiction and the developer to hopefully mitigate anything like that. But really, it's just a request for comments. We're going to take that on as regional planning and make sure that either we include it in our initial review memo that we provide on cases, or that we include those comments to the local planner as soon as possible. So that really helps to bolster and recognize years-long work that regional planning has been involved in with source water protection. Similarly, with regional trails, a very similar policy, but a different plan. This one is about trails in the region. We've for a long time been working with EDON, the jurisdictions, the RTC, and most recently the Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation, who's hired a regional trails coordinator and props up a working group of local agencies, state agencies, federal agencies to look at regional trail connectivity and what our trail system is like. And so same thing, we're asking the local jurisdiction master plans and facilities plans to recognize the Truckee Meadows Trails Plan, to utilize the data. And then if a spatial interaction is identified for a given conformance review that we're processing, that there's an opportunity to connect trails or to link in, right, to our existing trail network or even our future conceptual network. We want to make sure we're understanding that potential opportunity and that we're asking that Truckee Meadows Trails Working Group for comments and connecting them to the applicant and the jurisdiction to make sure that, you know, we can take the opportunity when these things are being built to connect trails and to work that into the system. So those two policies are really very similar. Recognize the plans, and then TMRPA will, if we identify a connection, we'll go out there and get some comments and make sure that we get that into the hands of the local jurists. You can find the existing Truckee Meadows Trails Planning Report by going to the website there at the bottom or clicking around on the Parks Foundation website. You can find it there. Okay, so then the third new policy we're proposing is a tribal coordination policy. We just want to make sure that we are respecting the perspectives of our tribal partners in the region and enhancing our engagement and communication with those folks when we have regional conformance cases. We're working on a set of parameters that would help us to really elevate a given case if we think, either the tribal folks think or regional planning staff think, that it really should have a tribal element or comments from the tribes on the case. For example, let's say a subject site comes in and it's a mile away from the Pyramid Lake Reservation. That'll, you know, instantly tell us, hey, we need to make sure we're talking to the tribes about this and that they're aware and getting their comments. But also we want to make sure that they have access to everything that we're doing. And for that matter, that everyone has access to everything that we're working on in terms of cases here at Regional. And so not really part of the policy per se, but a process that we're going to implement at Regional Planning is we're going to create a web page that anytime we publish an initial review memo, it'll be available for anyone to go take a look at. So folks won't be dependent on us to have to identify if they just want to see what we're working with and they want to make a comment, they could do that. And for those of you that are new to the commission or sitting in, the IRM is our initial review memo. That's something we implemented in 2019. And for whatever reason, for a long time, regional planning wasn't weighing in when the jurisdictions would send out their initial development review memo request for comments. So we changed that, and now we're also providing our comments in the beginning, because that way folks know what we're thinking from day one. Okay, so that's the third policy, and we're actually actively engaged with talking to the tribes, and we plan to go back to, we already have once gone and presented to both tribal councils for Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe and the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and we're trying to line up to go back once more before plan adoption, tell them about our progress, and hear their perspective. Okay, and then here's the heavy hitter, the big data policy we're trying to get in around natural resources. We're calling it Natural Resource Consideration Areas, or NRCA, really a companion to our existing policy defining development constraint areas. So we have a really good policy right now, NR3, which says development is prohibited in areas of very steep slopes, over 30%, FEMA AE floodways, 404 wetlands, federal lands. So very discrete spatial boundaries for where that development prohibition exists. But I think we know as human beings that a line on a map might define a floodway or whatever characteristic. That doesn't necessarily mean that it ends there on the ground, right? The AE floodway, for instance, travels through a 100-year floodplain. So there are considerations for flooding even outside that AE floodway. So what we really wanted to do was take the data gathering effort we did for natural resources and leverage it and make sure we were bringing an informational component to all the cases that regional planning does for their conformance review. And so we are using this concept, natural resource consideration areas. We're going to have a map tool also available on our website, but basically for every case, we will review spatial interactions with the subject site, and then we will report those interactions as a readout, as a kind of an attachment at the back of our initial review memo, so that anyone involved in the case or anyone that goes to that website I mentioned can see what those natural resource considerations might be. And of course, we want those then natural resource considerations to be addressed or considered, thought about, dealt with during the jurisdictional development review process. The layers right now that we are getting, the starting point for that policy are these layers you see here. So we're going to be talking about slopes of 15 to 30%. Now, each master plan, the local jurists and in their code, they have ways to deal with these slopes. So we're really kind of in that case, in some of these cases, memorializing what folks are already doing, but that's always good to have a double check. So anyway, slopes 15 to 30%, wildfire risk, wildlife habitat and migration corridors, endangered or threatened species, critical source water protection areas, I mentioned that, the regional trails, mentioned that, flood information, and then agricultural lands. And so again, for every case that we are processing at regional planning, we will evaluate the spatial extent of the subject site versus these data that are also spatial, and then report back those interactions. And so that'll look something like this example. So example 1, on the left, you can see a green polygon in the middle there with an APN number. And you can also probably see that it's within that green boundary. There's some orange stuff and there's some hatched polygon shape there. And so there's an interaction with, for that, this is a mock-up obviously, but in this case, there's an interaction with endangered species and there's an interaction with that fire history polygon. Likewise, if you go to example 2 over to the right there, you got a kind of a weird shaped green subject site. We're evaluating that. Again, there is a interaction with the brown layer, the fire history layer, but also an interaction with that purple circle, which is a buffer of around a well, I imagine. It's a critical source water protection area. And so this is the kind of thing that will be available in the IRM, and it's going to look something like this. We don't have it totally finalized yet, but this will be attached to the back of the review memo. And it basically says, okay, here's the APN we're talking about. And here are those different interactions. You can see on the left side, 0% cover with critical SWPA. And that makes sense because there's no purple. But on the right side, example 2, there's like a 43% cover of that critical source water protection area. So that's just information that we know right up front at that initial stage. And that will help folks, I think, negotiate those features. And really, we're doing this in part to satisfy our state law mandate to, if you look at 278.0274, it's called the contents of the regional plan. Within that, we need to address natural resources and their protection and identify areas that are suitable for development considering natural resources. So that's what we're attempting to do with these data layers, and also our big data gathering effort that we did for the NR plan, and of course the NR plan itself. So those, excuse me, those are the 4 new natural resource policies that we're trying to propose for inclusion. With that, I'll move on to the public infrastructure plan, which is our
Hey,
other
Jeremy.
big initiative where we're really trying to
Jeremy.
get a handle on capital
Jeremy.
improvement spending. Oh, is there a question? Okay, please go.
No, I was just thinking that maybe we pause here and see if there are any questions from the
Good call, Shelley. Yep,
commissioners
absolutely.
on the natural resource section.
You got it.
And I don't see any hands raised or anybody ready to ask a question. So I did have one general question.
Sure.
For these policies, how can an agency, even though they all, the county, City of Sparks, City of Reno, all approve these plans and adopt them, can they disregard any of these policies? How
They cannot disregard the policies and be in conformance with the regional plan if they're a
Okay.
policy requirement, but maybe Jessica, our legal counsel, can speak to that.
Hello, Jessica Prunty, legal counsel for Regional Planning Commission. Madam Chair, in answer to your question, there is a time period after the adoption of the regional plan update by the Regional Planning Governing Board for which all affected entities, such as the Washoe County School District, Tumwa, Western Regional Water, and the 3 local jurisdictions to make updates to their own facilities or master plans to bring those plans into conformance with the newly revised regional plan. So that's how that will work. They will actually have to make changes within their plan. And, you know, in particular areas of our regional plan, there'll be directions saying you must adopt a policy that says X, Y, Z. So those are really clear directions, but there might be some more nuanced type of policies where regional planning staff will go over to make sure that they do in fact conform with the newly adopted regional plan. So that's a mandate under statute. So if they disregard that, I don't think we've ever had that situation in the history of regional planning. And I know though that there is a concept called scheduled additions. So if a particular jurisdiction says, okay, you know, here's our conforming plan, we've made changes, but we need more time to address X, Y, Z, then there can be a determination by this body, because the conformance review will come to you to say, okay, that's going to be okay. We're fine with those scheduled additions in the timeframe that you put forth. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Welcome.
All
Thank you,
right.
Jessica. This is Jeremy Smith again for the record. Shall you want me to keep going?
Yes, please keep going.
Okay, you got it. No problem. I would just add that for the NRCA specifically, we're not asking the jurisdictions to use that information on every single case that they have at their local level. We are going to provide an online tool that will create that function. So a local planner, if they're just doing it, say a small case that doesn't trigger the regional review, they can go in there and utilize the online tool and they can get that same readout. But we're going to just ensure that that NRCA information is absolutely included on every single regional case that we process for conformance review. Okay, so moving on to the public infrastructure plan side. In fact, we don't have any policy additions proposed for the public infrastructure plan. We have a little bit of policy refinement on PF3, but what it's really been helping us do is meet our state mandate to summarize capital improvement programs of the local jurisdictions and entities, and to make sure that we can link the improvements we're planning to where we're anticipating and accommodating growth. Oh, hang on one sec. We're figuring out the tech. Okay, we're back. Good. So yeah, the PIP or PI plan, or however you want to call it, public infrastructure plan, has 3 main goals, and these are similar to the NR goals. I mean, create a document. Both of these efforts are going to have a document that ends up being adopted with the regional plan in October, but really serves as a reference plan. All of the policies will be actually in the regional plan document that we already have. But there will be this public infrastructure document, and the goal there, well, I'll go to that in a sec. Goal 2 is to bring together data on CIP and also infrastructure GIS data. And goal 3 is to design any policy or process improvements with the regional plan or the regional planning conformance review process. So in terms of, it doesn't seem to be working now, Carla. Thank you. Okay. All of this public infrastructure work exists within 5 public facility and service domains. And these are reflected in that new policy we instituted in 2019, which is PF1, our region-wide facilities and services standards table. Basically trying to get at, we want to make sure that we understand how these 5 pieces are going of, infrastructure and service are going to be delivered to that project site, or what are the impacts of that project on these things at the time that you guys have to make your decision on whether or not it's a good idea. And we got these 5 domains directly from that NRS statute I mentioned, 278.0274, which is the contents of the regional plan, which asks that regional planning be involved in these domains, basically in overseeing that they're adequately ready to accommodate that growth. So it's potable water, wastewater, stormwater / flood control, the transportation, that includes the airport, and also schools. Okay, so for goal 1, let's create that document. We have already drafted very much of it. We're currently working with a consultant, Hansford Economic Consulting. We have about another week and a half or so of going through the draft, and then hopefully we'll have that up for review for you guys on that website, a full version of that document. And really what the document is designed to do is to kind of describe the who, what, when, where of that whole, those 5 domains. So it'll be information about, who does what, how does sewer work, who's managing it, what are the treatment facilities, where do they serve? It's going to be that kind of information. And then information that changes year over year will actually be also vetted and tracked by regional planning staff, but then presented as an online dashboard so that every year we can update that info about spending or statistics about miles of road or whatever it happens to be. Goal 2 is just exactly about that. It's about combining available data on existing and planned infrastructure. So what we've been doing is working with a long list of folks. Actually, I might have the list coming up here soon, so I'll show you that. But a couple of efforts. We're grabbing GIS data. So think about like GIS data describes where pipes are for delivering water or maybe for collecting wastewater. Where are the bus stops? Where are the transit routes? That kind of a thing. And all of that GIS data is then being generalized with this hexagon framework you see at the right to kind of help anonymize it, keep it in the safe zone, but then also still reveal spatially across our TMSA footprint, where we have these kinds of infrastructure pieces and where we're lacking them. And of course, that matters in terms of where we can accommodate growth or understanding what would be necessary to extend the infrastructure to accommodate growth. So that's the GIS data side of it. We're also taking a deep dive, per again that state law, into the capital improvement programs. And so we've got two approaches to that. The first is to look at a retrospective of the previous fiscal year and understand what was actually spent on what kinds of capital, what did we get capital improvement asset-wise, and were those investments to accommodate growth, or were they for what we're calling community investment? And community investment's a bucket that really contains things like maintenance and rehabilitation, building in sustainability, things that are affecting infrastructure and pieces that are already here that can, maintain the quality of service that our residents already enjoy, versus projects that are for growth, where it's really a new thing and we have to build some new infrastructure, or the developers have to build some new infrastructure and dedicate it to the locals. And we're tracking that percentage as well, which is kind of a really neat thing. So that's the retrospective look. We're looking at that previous fiscal year, and we're doing this every year. And then looking forward, we'll be looking at the 5-year CIPs. So both of those things are already required to be documented by the locals. They have to do an annual comprehensive financial report. They have to do a capital improvement program. So we're really leveraging work that's already happening, and we're trying to stay in our lane and synthesize it at a high level for the entire region, because everyone's doing a really amazing job, is what we've seen as we go and we're digging into all this infrastructure planning. Folks at all the entities are doing an excellent job, but they really are focused on their jurisdiction or their single purpose thing. Like Tumwa worries about water, right? They're probably not really thinking too deeply about schools. And so really our job is kind of bringing it all together with this document and with these online dashboards showing the data. So that's kind of the data approach. And that's the 2 big bins. We're trying to understand, what are we doing for growth and what are we doing to maintain the levels of service we already have. And then finally, we're going to design and implement policy improvements to the regional plan. Really, we don't have per se policy improvements planned, but certainly process improvements. This data is going to be integral to help us with our casework. I think it could, over time, eventually lead to some policy changes that we could work on collectively. I will say that there is a policy PF3 that we put in there in 2019 that required us to create the public infrastructure plan. We're modifying that language to indicate that this is a reference plan of the regional plan, and annually we will be maintaining. So that is a change to that policy PF3. In fact, we're also doing that to policy 1, the natural resource plan policy, which did the same thing. It said, hey, create this natural resource plan. Now we've created it, so we're going to maintain it. And here's the list of folks that we're working with, or entities really, on this public infrastructure side. So it's all the jurisdictions and all of the entities and agencies that operate within those 5 domains that I mentioned inside, Washoe County. Okay, so with that, maybe another good place to stop and see if you guys had any questions on the public infrastructure side of things.
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead and raise them now.
You'll get another shot at this. I mean, there's going to be plenty of times for you to give us comments and suggest edits, but we want to get as much to you as soon as we can. So that's why we're doing this.
All right, I think you're good to go and to continue, Jeremy.
Excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so moving on just quickly through the rest of those blue or green items on that initial table I showed you. So in terms of RF5, that's the Regional Land Designation Amendment Policy. Basically, it's a list of criteria that need to be met by the applicant to change from one regional land designation to another. We kind of refer to those as the tiers as a shorthand. So let's say you want to increase the potential density on a given site. It's currently tier 3. You would need to go through a regional plan amendment process to do that, to take it to a higher tier. We specifically wanted to add in a line to the Truckee Meadows service area criteria that, it's already a finding of a regional plan amendment to consider natural resources. But given all the work we've been doing on NR and the fact that we have the NRCA policy, we really wanted to indicate that if you're trying to bring land into our Truckee Meadows service area, we really want to emphasize, what are the impacts to natural resources? What does that look like? So we added that one line at the end of those criteria. In terms of RF9, the freestanding community requirements, when we were putting together the 2019 regional plan, we kind of recognized that Washoe County has a few communities that predate the regional plan, predate, a lot of these ideas that we have. So, and that's Gerlach, Empire, and Wadsworth. For those 3 areas, we recognize them as freestanding communities and that they can operate a little bit differently within the boundaries of those freestanding communities based on the fact that they developed in a certain way. We're not trying to apply the tiering system we use in the TMSA to Gerlach, for instance. But what we found was that I think we thought we were going to be able to get some sort of boundaries in the regional plan. We do not have boundaries for those freestanding communities in the plan. Those are maintained by Washoe County. And so it would still require a conformance review if they wanted to change their master plan. What we've done is just we're asking to remove the regional plan amendment aspect because we're not actually mapping those boundaries in the regional plan. So we don't think it should be required to do an amendment. That's what that one is aimed at. In terms of PF5, that is talking about those capital improvement programs. And we went through it and we just noticed that we were kind of inaccurately referencing the capital improvement program statute, that 278.0226. So we adjusted the policy language to, accurately reflect what the state law says the jurisdictions are supposed to do. That was a pretty easy one. PF17 it's an interesting one. We did a lot of work in late 2000s with regional utility corridors and trying to understand what the role of regional planning could be in terms of regional utility corridors. There's already, as many of you know, projects of regional significance. There's a requirement there that if you're putting in a 60 kV line or higher, it needs to be vetted as a PRS. And also, we've added a component years ago that we are going to map regional utility corridors in the regional plan. And so what this policy is trying to say is that, sometimes for whatever reason, safety or whatever it might be, there could be an idea that a transmission line should be undergrounded. And the idea was that the Regional Planning Governing Board could talk about that concept and make a recommendation to the PUCN, the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada, to say this, we think would be a good idea if you undergrounded it, and here's how the cost should be allocated, because there is obviously significant cost to undergrounding. When we were translating the old plan, the 2012 plan, into the 2019 plan, we didn't do the greatest job of this particular policy of kind of capturing the intent. And it had some language in there that said RPGB must make the final determination on undergrounding for a new transmission line. And in talking with our legal counsel, Jessica Prunty and others, at the jurisdictions, we don't have that authority to do that. So we've just opted to modify that language just a little bit. Certainly the RPGB has the ability to take a look at what is being proposed in terms of undergrounding and make a recommendation to the PUCN, but we don't have to make a final determination, or they don't rather, on whether or not it needs to be undergrounded. So that's the edit there. This is a really easy one. We already have NR6, NR8, NR9. These are all things that are now included in that NRCA policy, and we've just added a line to simply recognize that the contextual item from that policy will be evaluated in the NRCA tool. We're getting close to the end. Okay, RC2 spheres of influence. You may remember the Mogul case, and the translation table didn't really work as intended per se, because something was moving out of the Reno sphere of influence, a parcel that was mixed employment was moving back to the county. They were rolling out of the sphere, and the translation table only allowed it to go into commercial, but in fact it had industrial zoning, and that was the intended use. And so we've just opted to add that translation to that table so that in the future it's one of the options that mixed employment, which is my understanding is that in Reno, a lot of the mixed employment areas are light industrial. So we want to make sure that that translation is there for any areas that are in the sphere of influence that might roll back. Let's see, RC5, that's our initial review memorandum policy that says, hey, Team RPA, stop being silent, say something in the beginning so folks know what you want. We just added a line in there that said, we're going to do that, but also we're going to add that natural resource information to our memo. And finally, we have one additional new policy that talking with legal, we thought would be a good idea. And that is just to acknowledge that, we use online and digital data and mapping tools to do our work. The maps that are in our regional plan are accurately created from that data, but the scale that they're presented at is not really, it's not an efficient way to look at that map. So we're using, GIS, ArcGIS tools and online map viewers and that kind of a thing. We just wanted to kind of make sure there was a policy that indicated that, so we were covered. Okay, I'm going to stop there. With that, any questions on any of those new policies? That was kind of wide ranging.
I don't see anybody raising their hand or speaking up, so I think you can go ahead and move on.
Okay, moving right along then. Okay, how do we get to the end? How do we get to October 10th, 2024, when we want to take this plan and these reference plans and all of this stuff we've been working on and get it finally adopted as the regional plan, the 2024 version? Well, this is how we're going to get there. So today we're here meeting on June 27th. We have an NR plan draft out there. We're close on that PI plan, and you've now been, we've now shown you all of the proposed policy additions and changes. So we're basically there. I would have liked to have been a little further, but we're going to get there by the July 25th meeting, actually a week ahead of that, so that you have access to all of these materials. It's going to be another opportunity for you to provide us some feedback on the NR plan draft, the PIP draft, and also we're working to get a redlined version of the 2024 regional plan draft. So it's going to show exactly what used to be in there and what the new things proposed to be will be. We'll take that to this body for your July meeting. And then based upon your recommendation, we'll take that same information, maybe with any of the feedback we receive, and can get in there in the time frame to the Regional Planning Governing Board about 2 weeks later and present that to them as well. So that's really kind of an acceptance move there. It's not the final adoption. It's just saying, here's where we're at. Take a look at this and please provide us feedback. And then even after that, there's going to be more time for the public, for stakeholders, for you guys, anyone to weigh in and give us more feedback, especially at our August 17th, third annual One Region event, which is happening at Rancho San Rafael. We hope to see you there. We're probably going to have a bluegrass band again. We're going to have some fun games like Paint the Region. There's maybe a doggy photo booth. And we're going to talk about the new plan and all of these things I'm talking today. We're going to be there to talk to the public about what we're trying to do. So that'll be another time for folks to provide feedback. And then finally, we'll bring on August 22nd to the RPC, to this body, the final versions of all of this stuff based on all of that work we're going to do over the next 2 months to make sure everyone's had a look at it. And we'll bring those final versions for acceptance or any further feedback and make those final changes so that we can start this process, which per state law, we have to hold a public hearing with the RPC physically in each of the 3 jurisdictions. And so we have a meeting planned for Thursday the 12th, Thursday the 19th, and Thursday the 26th in September, one in each location across the region, where we will be bringing the final document versions of all of these, the natural resource plan, the public infrastructure plan, and the actual regional plan update draft itself with the red lines to you for these 3 public hearings, at the end of which, if you're satisfied, then you can make a recommendation to the governing board for that October 10th meeting, where we will look for final adoption of the new plan 5 years to the day exactly from the previous adoption in 2019. That was our goal. So we're still on track to make it. We got some work to do, but we're going to get there. All right. With that, there is a potential motion here on the screen. It's not very fancy. It's just really, I move to accept this report. If you want to provide feedback, we'd be happy to hear it. Thank you very much for listening. You can go back to that fixes now.
Thank you, Jeremy. That was great. Any commissioners have a question or are prepared to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I move to accept this report.
Commissioner Becerra, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, move on to reports. Do we have a director's report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeremy Smith, for the record. I'll keep it really short and sweet. I just want to say thanks to Kate Nelson and Pat Phillips and Francine Donchik for their service on the RPC. This is the last meeting that we'll see Kate in this capacity, is my understanding. So it's been awesome working with you, Kate. Really appreciate all your time and efforts. Thanks so much. And then welcome Rob. Rob's going to be joining us officially in July, along with Dan Lazarecki. I'm not sure I said that right. Probably you'll have to help me. I'll have to learn that one. And Michael Flick. So that we're going to have a new cast of characters from Washoe County. We're excited about that. But that'll conclude my report. Thank you very much. Oh, one more thing. I'm sorry. I said it already, but July 25th will be our next meeting. And it says Washoe County Commission Chambers, but I think we might try for this room, in fact, and give this a shot. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Any member reports? Well, I just want to say, Kate, it's been a pleasure serving with you on this commission, and you and the others will be greatly missed. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Um,
And I really enjoyed my time on the commission. It's been fun.
Definitely, we've had some interesting meetings. Legal counsel report.
Madam Chair, Jessica Prenti for the record, nothing to report tonight.
Okay, any requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll open it up for public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have none.
Okay, I will close public comment. Any written correspondence?
No, there's none.
Okay, well then I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.